Right in the middle of my vacation, my son texted me, "We know this is your beach house, but we want some alone time with my wife's parents, so please move to a hotel." I replied, "Understood." And then I made my final move. What happened an hour later made my in-laws beg my son to divorce their daughter. Dear listeners, before we begin this difficult story, I want to ask you a favor. If my story resonates with your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments which city or state you are listening from. It warms my spirit to know how far my voice travels. Happy listening. The midday sun in the low country doesn't just warm you, it melts you. It burns away everything superfluous, leaving only the essence. Scorching stone, the scent of dry Spanish moss, and the deafening ring of that makes your temples throb by evening. But here, on the terrace of Indigo Point, the heat felt different. The air was heavy, not from the humidity, but from the icy silence that hung over the dining table. I stood at the kitchen island with my back to my guests, slicing a juicy watermelon. The knife slid into the flesh with a soft crunch. This was my kitchen. I had drafted this blueprint myself 20 years ago. I knew why the window faced exactly southwest to catch the sunset rays without letting in the brutal midday heat. I remembered choosing these Italian tiles the color of baked milk, arguing with the contractor about the height of the countertops. Every inch of this house was an extension of me, my will, my labor. But today I felt like a ghost here, a disembodied spirit whose only task was to serve, clean, and disappear. At the large table on the terrace, under the shade of a pergola draped in wisteria, sat the masters of life. My son Sterling had his face buried in his plate, diligently avoiding my gaze. His shoulders were slumped, and in that posture, I saw the little boy who used to hide behind my skirt after breaking a neighbor's window. Only now, he wasn't hiding behind me. He was hiding from me. Opposite him sat Zenobia Vance, my daughter-in-law's parents. They were eating the red snapper I had prepared with expressions that suggested they were doing the fish a favor by allowing it to be eaten. Zenobia, a heavy-set woman dripping in massive gold jewelry that looked ridiculous against the backdrop of a casual beach lunch, dabbed her lips with a napkin and pushed her plate away with disdain. "The fish is a little dry," she announced loudly, addressing no one in particular. "Remember that restaurant in Savannah?" The snapper was much more tender there. M grunted, not looking up from his phone. Service was different there, too. But the loudest voice belonged to my daughter-in-law sat at the head of the table, my table, pouring ice-cold wine into glasses. She wore a light white dress that accentuated her deep, glowing skin perfectly, but did nothing to hide the predatory expression on her face. She surveyed the terrace, like a general inspecting conquered territory. "Mom, Dad, you have no idea what plans we have," she chirped. Her voice grated on my ears like metal on glass. Sterling and I decided, this wall here is completely unnecessary. We're going to tear it down, put in floor-to-ceiling glass, panoramic views, and this garden. She waved her wine glass carelessly toward my rose bushes, which I had nurtured for years, selecting varieties resistant to the salt air. Too old-fashioned. All these bushes and flower beds. We need minimalism. Concrete, glass, manicured lawn. Right, Sterling. Sterling flinched and nodded hurriedly, stuffing a piece of bread into his mouth. "Yes, babe. Whatever you say." I froze with the platter of watermelon. Inside, somewhere near my solar plexus, a cold lump formed. They were discussing the destruction of my labor, as if I weren't there, as if I were part of the decor. An outdated piece of furniture, soon to be hauled to the dump. "Miss." His voice cracked like a whip. "We're out of wine. Bring another bottle from the fridge and more ice. This ice has melted." She didn't even turn her head. She just snapped her fingers in the air. The Vances exchanged glances with a slight, barely noticeable smirk. In their world, there were only two types of people, those who are served and those who serve. To them, I, the owner of a villa worth a fortune, was just a squatter, a poor relative allowed to stay out of charity in exchange for kitchen duties. I exhaled slowly, counting to 3. Anger is a bad advisor. Anger is an emotion, and emotions destroy structure. As an architect, I knew that if a foundation cracks, you can't just plaster over it. But right now, I had to save face for the sake of my son, for the sake of the fragile peace I thought I was obligated to maintain. "I'll bring it right out," I said quietly. My voice was steady, no tremor. I placed the watermelon on the table, took the empty bottle, and retreated into the cool of the house. There, in the silence of the hallway, I leaned my forehead against the cool wall. My heart was pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. "Endure it," I told myself. "They're leaving in a week. You survived construction in the 9s. You survived divorce. You survived economic recessions. You can survive this rudeness." Returning with the wine, I caught Zenobia's gaze on me. It wasn't sympathetic. No, it held a patronizing curiosity, the kind one uses to look at a strange insect. "So, you do everything yourself all by yourself?" She drawled. "We have help for that back home. Sterling says you just have nothing to do in retirement, so you fuss around." I didn't answer. I just poured their wine, feeling an invisible string inside me pulling, stretching to the limit beyond which lies the snap. "I need to go to the market," I said suddenly. The words came out on their own. I needed to leave, to break out of this circle of humiliation, to breathe air not saturated with the poison of arrogance. "We're out of fresh figs. Do you like figs with your cheese?" "Oh, go ahead." Tossed out carelessly, already turning back to her parents. "And pick up some of those large olives. Just don't get the cheap ones like last time." I grabbed my bag and walked out the gate without even changing my clothes. The sun hit my eyes, but I needed it. I walked down the winding street toward the ocean, past live oaks draped in moss, standing like sentinels. The sound of the surf grew louder, drowning out the voices in my head. Here, among ordinary people, among the smells of fried shrimp, spices, and the sea, I usually felt alive. The market was buzzing. Vendors were calling out to customers. It smelled of dill and smoked mullet. I stopped at a stall with a familiar vendor to pick out figs, dark, purple, with skins cracking from ripeness. I was choosing the best fruit, out of habit, caring for those I left back at the villa. And then in the pocket of my linen sundress, my phone vibrated. I pulled it out, squinting against the sun. A message from Sterling. My heart skipped a beat. Maybe he felt ashamed. Maybe he wanted to apologize for his wife's behavior. I opened the chat. The letters danced before my eyes. But the meaning hit me instantly, like a punch to the gut. "Mom, we know this is your beach house, but parents feel uncomfortable. We want to be alone with them. Discuss the family business. Please move to a hotel until the end of the week. We'll pay for the room." I froze in the middle of the market square. People flowed around me. Someone bumped my shoulder, muttering an apology, but I didn't hear them. The world around me had gone on mute. "Your beach house." That's what he called my home, my sanctuary. Uncomfortable in my own house. Move to a hotel. I reread the message, and again the tears that had been rising to my throat for the last 2 hours suddenly vanished, evaporated like a drop of water on a hot iron. Instead of resentment, instead of the bitterness of an abandoned mother, something else arrived. A cold understanding. I saw the structure of their lies. I saw the rot in the pillars of our relationship. For years, I had closed my eyes to the cracks, patched them with my love, my money, my patience. But now, the building had collapsed, and I had no intention of standing in the ruins. They want to be alone. They want to discuss family business in my house, after kicking me out the door. Well then, I didn't call and scream. I didn't write long tirades about conscience and gratitude. I felt like a surgeon, picking up a scalpel to cut out gangrene. I typed one word, understood, and pressed send. Then I closed the chat with my son. I didn't open a hotel booking app. I opened my contacts list and scrolled down to a name I hadn't dialed in 3 years, but kept just in case. Luxury real estate. The ringtone started immediately. I stood in the middle of the market, clutching a bag of figs in one hand that they were destined never to taste, and in the other, the phone that had become my detonator. Hello. The voice on the line was surprised. To what do I owe the pleasure? Haven't heard from you in ages. Hello, I said. My voice was as hard as the granite foundation of my house. Are you still looking for buyers for prime waterfront property? Always. Always. Why is one of the neighbors selling? No, I answered, looking at the sparkling sea in the distance. I am selling Indigo Point. You're joking. Indigo Point. And I need a buyer today. Right now. I threw the bag of figs into the nearest trash can. The sweet fruits hit the bottom with a dull thud, and that sound became the period at the end of my past life. I turned and walked away from the market, not toward home, but toward the waterfront, where behind glass walls like an aquarium, sat in his office. The realtor's office greeted me with the chill of air conditioning and the smell of expensive coffee. A heavy-set man with a sly squint and a graying goatee jumped up from his desk as soon as I crossed the threshold. He had known me a long time. He remembered how I fought the zoning board for every foot of land for Indigo Point, how I clawed out the permits for utilities. He knew the value of my word. He swept his gaze over me, reading the confusion. My simple linen sundress and lack of makeup clearly clashed with the determination in my eyes. Are you serious? The point, your baby. I sat in the chair opposite him, wasting no time on pleasantries. I need an urgent showing. Not just a showing. I need a deal today. Slowly sank back into his chair, interlacing his fingers over his stomach. His professional instinct, honed by decades of deals with capricious, wealthy folks, was already firing on all cylinders. Today is a flexible concept in real estate. Usually that means this month. You know the market, documents, inspections, negotiations. My documents are in order. The title is clean. No liens. I am the sole owner. I spoke dryly, chopping my sentences. I don't need negotiations. I need a person with cash who wants this house right now. Someone ready to pay for immediate possession. Squinted, studying my face. He was looking for traces of hysteria, madness, or despair, but he saw only cold calculation. Did something happen? He asked cautiously. A new life has begun, I replied, and there is no room in it for old walls. Do you have such a client? Chewed his lip, then abruptly reached for his keyboard. There is one, Titus. Titus the Titan Banks, a developer from Atlanta. Crazy money, temper like a powder keg. He's been eyeing your lot for a long time. Says the view is worth $1 million. He's in town, right now looking for something turnkey to move in tomorrow and live. But he's a handful. He's difficult. I don't care about his character, as long as he has the cash. I cut him off. Call him. Tell him the owner is ready to show the house in an hour, and warn him the condition of sale is immediate vacating of the premises by I stumbled for a second, choosing the word, by the temporary tenants. Raised his eyebrows but didn't ask questions. He dialed a number, put it on speaker, and winked at me. Hello, Mr. Banks? Yes, it's... Remember that house on the point? Yes, the one with the terraces. The owner is ready. Yes, today. Price? He looked at me questioningly. I wrote a number on a piece of paper and slid it to him, a number that would ensure a comfortable old age anywhere in the world. Chuckled approvingly and voiced the sum. A coarse, rumbling laugh came from the speaker. If it's everything you described, I'll take it sight unseen. We're rolling out. Be at the gates in 40 minutes. Hung up. He bit. Now, let's sign a preliminary letter of intent so you don't change your mind when emotions cool down. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't tremble. I wasn't signing away a house. I was signing for my freedom. With every stroke of the pen, I felt the weight that had pressed on my shoulders for years becoming lighter. I was no longer the convenient mom, the free cook, or the squatter. I was again the architect of my own fate. Thank you. I stood up. Meet you at the villa. Leaving the office, I looked at my reflection in the window. A tired woman in a simple sundress with stray strands of hair. No, this wouldn't do. I wouldn't return there as a victim. I would return as the master of the situation. I walked into a boutique next door. It was an expensive shop where my daughter-in-law only went to window shop and complain about the prices. I walked in with confidence. I didn't need a dress or a suit. There was no time for that. I needed details, accessories that change one's posture. I chose a silk scarf, emerald green with gold thread, noble and severe. I tied it around my neck the way I used to when I defended architectural projects before commissions in my youth. Then I walked to the rack of sunglasses, oversized tortoise-shell frames. They hid the fatigue in my eyes and gave my face an expression of impenetrable mystery. Paying with my card, I walked out onto the street. Now I felt different. The fabric on my neck cooled my skin. The dark glasses created a distance between me and the world. I went into a coastal cafe, ordered an espresso, and sat at a table with a view of the town clock tower. I had 30 minutes left. I wasn't afraid of returning. On the contrary, I was waiting for it. Inside me, the excitement of a gambler ignited, one who knows the opponent's cards, but they can't see hers. I remembered their faces at lunch, their disdain, their certainty that I would meekly pack my things and leave for a cheap motel, so as not to disturb their family happiness. They think they control the situation. They think I am weak. They are mistaken. I took out my phone. I needed to make one more move. Small but important. A warning shot before I opened my banking app, found the statement showing my pension deposits and the complete absence of any transfers from my son for the past 3 years. Then I opened a folder of documents in the cloud, a scan of the property deed, date of issue 2003, owner's name. I saved this file into a separate archive and password protected it. Then I opened my messenger app and found the contact, the Vances. I had never texted them. I had the number just in case. I attached the file and added a caption. A gift for the family. I'll give you the password when we meet. Send. The message went through. 2 check marks lit up instantly. I imagined, and Zenobia's phones pinging simultaneously there on my terrace. They would probably be surprised, frown, decide. I sent them some silly recipe or photos of that don't exist yet. They wouldn't be able to open the file now. But the seed of curiosity was planted, and when the time came, it would sprout into a storm. The phone vibrated again. It was. Titan is on site. We're moving out. Be there in 15 minutes. I finished my coffee in one gulp. The bitterness on my tongue tasted sweet to me. I stood up, adjusted my glasses, and headed to the taxi stand. It was time to go home for the last time, not as a servant, but as the sword of justice. The taxi sped me up the winding road, toward Indigo Point. I watched the pines and the sea flashing by the window. The sea that had given me peace for so many years. Today it would witness my triumph or my ruin. But I knew one thing. The old was gone. She stayed back at the market with the crushed figs. The car stopped at the gates. I saw a massive black SUV already parked there. Titus Banks's car stood nearby, glancing nervously at his watch. Titus himself, a mountain of a man in a sand-colored linen suit, was talking loudly on his phone, packing along the fence. I got out of the taxi, noticed me, and exhaled with relief. Titus interrupted his conversation and stared at me. I approached them without taking off my glasses. Good afternoon, I said. Apologies for the delay, miss. Titus grunted, sizing me up. Told me you were a sweet little old lady. But here I see a boss. I like it businesslike. Time is money, mister. Banks, I replied, opening the gate with my key. Please, the tour will be short. We entered the courtyard. From the depths of the garden, from the direction of the terrace, came the clinking of glasses and loud laughter. They were celebrating. They were drinking my wine, sitting in my house, confident they had kicked me out. I turned to the men. I have one condition before we go in, I said quietly. Titus frowned, which is there are unauthorized persons in the house right now. They don't know about the sale, and they believe they have a right to be there. I need you to play along. You are not just a buyer. You are the new owner who tolerates no objections. Titus spread into a wide, predatory grin, his eyes lit up with amusement. Kicking out squatters. I love that even more than buying houses. Lead the way, miss. Let's put on a show. We moved down the walkway toward the house. The laughter on the terrace grew louder. I heard Sterling's voice, relaxed and content. Yes, Dad. Great toast to us. I stepped onto the terrace stairs. Titus and followed me like two bodyguards. The show begins. I threw open the glass terrace doors, and the festive hum died instantly, as if someone had pulled the plug. Sterling froze with his glass raised. His mouth opened in absurd surprise. Who was sitting on her husband's lap, slowly slid onto her own chair. Her eyes narrowed. The Vances and Zenobia froze with forks in their hands, looking at me as if a stray dog had burst into their banquet. But I didn't look like a stray dog. I stood straight in dark glasses and a silk scarf, and behind me loomed two men in expensive suits. Mom. Sterling recovered first. His voice trembled. Mom, you came back. We had an agreement. Immediately seized the initiative. She jumped up, straightened her dress, and pasted on that fake sugary smile she used for inconvenient relatives. Miss, she chirped, stepping forward and trying to block the view of the table with the delicacies. You must have forgotten something. Suitcase, passport. We thought you were checking into the hotel already. We wired you the money for a taxi. She reached into the purse hanging on the back of the chair. I knew this gesture. She was going to pull out a couple of bills crumpled into a careless ball and try to shove them into my hand like a pesky beggar, so I would get out of sight quickly. Her parents watched this with approving nods. For them, this was standard procedure. Pay off the problem. Yes, boomed Vance, not standing up. Not cool in law. A deal is a deal. The young folks wanted to be alone, and here you are with guests. He waved his fork dismissively toward Titus and, who is this anyway? Your boyfriend's from the senior center. Zenobia giggled, covering her mouth with a napkin. Stop. Maybe they're porters. Miss, let them take your things from the hall, and let's not spoil the evening. I remained silent. I just looked at them through the dark lenses of my glasses. I saw had already pulled out the money, a crisp $50 bill, and was holding it out to me with the air of a benefactor. Here, take this for dinner at a restaurant, she said loudly so her parents could hear her generosity. And go. Really, this isn't the time. We have a family council. Sterling, my son, sat with his head down. He didn't look at me. He twirled the stem of his wine glass as if hoping that if he spun it long enough, I would disappear. Mom, please, he muttered barely audibly. Don't embarrass us. Leave. That leave sounded like a gunshot, quiet, suppressed, but fatal. He had chosen a side, finally, and irrevocably. I slowly took off my glasses. My gaze was dry and calm. No tears, no pleading, only cold steel. I ignored outstretched bill, walked past her as if she were empty space, and stood in the center of the room. Mister. Banks, I said loud and clear, addressing my companion. Come in. Don't be shy. Titus, massive and noisy, stepped forward, brushing aside with his shoulder so that she barely stayed on her feet. He surveyed the spacious living room, flooded with golden pre-sunset light like a landlord. "Not bad," he boomed. His voice filled the entire space, drowning out the sound of the surf. "High ceilings, lots of air." "I love it when there's lots of air." Gasped with indignation. "Who are you?" she shrieked. "How dare you barge into someone else's house?" "Sterling, do something." "Call the police." Sterling jumped up in confusion, but seeing Titus's size, he immediately deflated. Excuse me, but this is private property," he began uncertainly. "Exactly," barked Vance, standing up to his full height, his face flushed red. "This is my daughter and son-in-law's house. Get the hell out of here, before I call private security. And you, have you completely lost your mind in your old age, bringing strange men here?" I turned to Titus, completely ignoring the screams of the in-laws and daughter-in-law. "As you can see, the living room has excellent natural light." I continued my tour calmly, gesturing toward the panoramic windows. "Open layout, but clear zoning. The kitchen dining area flows into the relaxation zone." Titus smirked, understanding the game. He walked to the wall, knocked on it with his knuckles, then stomped his foot on the parquet. "Solid," he approved. "Not drywall. Feels like stone. And the view. Show me the balcony view." Of course, I nodded. "Right this way." We moved toward the balcony exit, walking straight through the group of stunned relatives. Grabbed my elbow. Her fingers dug into my skin. Long nails scratched my forearm. "What are you doing?" She hissed in my face, forgetting the mask of politeness. Her eyes were full of rage and fear. "Are you crazy in front of my parents? Do you want to ruin everything? I told you to get out." I slowly looked at her hand on my elbow, then raised my eyes to her face. "Get your hands off me," I said quietly, but with such intonation that jerked her hand back as if burned. "And don't interrupt the showing." "Showing," repeated Zenobia, blinking. "What showing?" I turned to her, then to Sterling, and finally looked at Titus again. "Mr. Banks," I said loudly so everyone could hear. "How do you like the house?" "I'll take it," he answered briefly, shoving his hands into his trouser pockets. "Location is prime. House is solid. We discussed the price. I'll transfer the money right now, if the keys are on the table in an hour." Silence hung in the room, so thick it seemed you could cut it with a knife. You could only hear a fly buzzing against the glass. "What do you mean take it?" whispered. Her face began to lose color, turning gray under the layer of foundation. I smiled. It wasn't a kind, motherly smile. It was the smile of a chess player delivering checkmate. "That means, dear daughter-in-law," I pronounced, enunciating every word, "that this house is sold. And as you can see, the current residents," I waved my hand at them, "are temporary squatters, and they will vacate the premises within an hour." "You can't," screeched, looking back at her parents. "Mom, Dad, she's delirious. She has dementia. She thinks she's selling our house." That Vance frowned. His thick eyebrows met at the bridge of his nose. He looked at me, then at his daughter, then at Sterling, who had turned than chalk. He said in a heavy voice, "What is she talking about? Why does she call this house hers?" Panicked. "Dad, don't listen to her. She's just listed as a nominal owner for taxes. You know how it is. We pay the mortgage. We put millions into this. This is our house, nominal." Asked Titus with a sneer. "Lady, I saw the documents half an hour ago. It's there in black and white. Sole owner. No liens, no mortgages, no shared ownership. Clean as a baby's tear." Opened her mouth to object, but no sound came out. She frantically searched for a new lie, but the web she had been weaving for years began to tear under the weight of the truth. I walked to the coffee table, where an ice bucket with champagne stood. Next to it lay my folder, which I had brought from's office. I opened it, took out the original property deed, thick paper with watermarks and an official seal, and placed it right under Vance's nose. "Read it," I said. "You're a man of the old school." You trust documents more than words. Slowly, as if reluctantly, picked up the paper. His hands, large working hands of a man who built his own business, trembled slightly. He put on the glasses hanging on a chain around his neck, raised his eyes to his daughter, then looked at the paper again. Thorn, he read aloud. Basis, land purchase agreement from 2001, certificate of occupancy for residential home from 2005. He lowered the paper. It became very cold in the room despite the heat. His voice was quiet, but that made it even more terrifying. You told us that you and Sterling bought this house 3 years ago. You said you took out a huge loan. You cried and asked for help with the down payment. Dad, I backed away. We sent you money every month, continued, and his voice began to gain strength like an avalanche. $5,000 every month for 3 years to pay off the mortgage. I stood silently. I didn't need to add anything. The truth was doing its own work, destroying their illusory world. Where is the mortgage? Roared, slamming his palm on the table so hard the glasses jumped. Where is the loan? If the house was built 20 years ago and belongs to his mother. I looked at Sterling. He covered his face with his hands. Mom, there is no mortgage, I said quietly, looking straight into Zenobia's eyes. I built this house with my own money. I never asked you for a penny. I never received $1 from you. The silence exploded. Vance slowly turned purple. The color rose from his neck to his face like mercury in a thermometer, predicting an explosion. He shifted his gaze from the document to his daughter and then to his son-in-law, who was still hiding his face in his hands. $5,000, he wheezed. Every month, 3 years. That's $180,000. Where is that money? Cornered, tried to counterattack. It was her usual tactic. The best defense is offense. Dad, you don't understand. She screamed. Her voice broke into a squeal. The house needed investments. Renovations. We did renovations. Did you see these tiles, these windows? All this costs money. We changed the plumbing, the roof. I couldn't hold back and chuckled. A short, dry laugh escaped on its own. Renovations, I repeated, walking to the wall and running my palm over the textured plaster. This plaster was applied in 2010. Italian style. It is in perfect condition because I take care of it. The floor tiles, vintage 2008 collection. I installed the windows 5 years ago before your marriage. There were no renovations here. Not a single nail was driven with your money. You're lying, shrieked, pointing a finger with a perfect manicure at me. You're just an old miser. Silence, roared, shaking the chandelier. He stepped toward his daughter, looming over her like a cliff. Don't you dare insult the woman in whose house you live and lie to our faces. Renovations, you say. Plumbing. I'm a builder. I see when a house has been renovated and when it stands untouched for 10 years. You took us for idiots. Zenobia, who had been silent in shock until now, suddenly sobbed and clutched her heart. Baby, how could you? We saved up from Dad's retirement fund. We thought you were struggling. Sterling finally took his hands off his face. He was pale as a sheet. I didn't know, he whispered, looking at his father-in-law with horror. Mr. Vance, I swear I didn't know about the money. Said you were just helping with groceries, lifestyle stuff. I didn't know the amounts. I thought they were gifts. Gifts. Roared. Gifts the size of a top executive salary. Are you a man or what? You don't see where your wife gets new furs, cars, trips to while you sit at your college as a junior associate. You thought it all falls from the sky. Sterling shrank. He really was blind, or wanted to be blind. It was convenient for him not to ask questions, convenient to live in comfort created by his wife, and not think about where the funds came from. He betrayed me with his silence and inaction. But now I saw that he wasn't an accomplice to the theft, but just a tool in his hands. Like her parents, A stupid, weak tool. All right, family drama is fascinating and all. Titus's loud voice cut through the tension. He stood leaning against the doorframe, watching the scene with interest, chewing on a toothpick. But for me, time is money. I assume the deal is still on. Or do I call my guys to help with the eviction? I have a demolition crew on standby. Wanted to break down a wall tomorrow morning. The words about demolition had a sobering effect on the Vances. They suddenly realized the reality of what was happening. They were in a stranger's house that had just been sold, and the new owner wasn't a man you argued with. Demolition, repeated Zenobia, looking at Titus with horror. Tomorrow. But where will we go? Our flight isn't for 3 days. Not my problem, ma'am. Titus spread his hands. The downtown, deluxe suites, ocean view, everything you like. Need me to call a cab? That is heavily sat down at the table. All his arrogance, all his vanished. Before us sat a tired, deceived old man who had just realized he raised a monster. He addressed me by name for the first time with respect, not disdain. Forgive us. We were misled. We thought you thought I was a poor relative living off your successful daughter. I finished for him harshly. You thought you were feeding me, not me providing you shelter. You allowed yourselves to humiliate me in my own home, because you believed that he who pays the piper calls the tune. But you weren't paying me. You were paying for lies, nodded, acknowledging every word. He had nothing to object to. You are right. We are at fault. We will pack our things right now. Dad. Rushed to him, grabbing his arm. Are you giving up? Will you let her kick us out? This is just a performance. She's bluffing. She didn't sell anything to anyone. She turned to me, her eyes burned with a feverish glint. You won't sell this house. You wouldn't dare. This is Sterling's inheritance. You are obligated to leave it to him. Obligated. I walked up to her closely. I was obligated to raise a son. I did that. I was obligated to give him an education. I did that. But I am not obligated to sponsor his spinelessness and your greed. This house is my pension fund. And I just cashed it out. I nodded to the realtor. Get the sales contract. Mr. Banks, let's sign right here on the table while the guests are packing. Who had stood as a silent shadow all this time, quickly took a folder out of his briefcase and laid the papers on the table, pushing aside a plate of fish. Pen here. He handed an expensive fountain pen to Titus. Titus walked to the table, scanned the text, grunted and signed with a flourish. Done. Money sent. Check the account, miss. My phone pinged. I took it out. A notification from the bank. A sum with 6 zeros. Money received, I said, showing the screen too. Now this house is officially not mine and certainly not yours. You have 45 minutes to vacate the premises. Time starts now. Stood staring at the phone screen like she was hypnotized. Her world was collapsing. Not just a house by the sea. The scheme was collapsing. The source of income, the status. No, she whispered. No, it can't be. And then Sterling did something I didn't expect from him. He stood up, walked over to and grabbed her by the shoulders. He said, "Where's my parents' money?" She jerked, trying to break free. Get off. Not now. Can't you see we're being kicked out? Screw the house, Sterling shouted. For the first time in his life, he raised his voice at his wife. Where is the 180 grand? What did you spend it on? On us, she shrieked. On your car. On your clothes. So you wouldn't look like a bum next to my friends. So we could live like people. My car is financed, yelled Sterling. I pay for it from my paycheck. You said you only chipped in for the down payment. And the rest, clothes, your endless personal growth retreats in Dubai, interjected. Yes. Yes. I wanted to live beautifully. And you. You are misers. You have millions in your accounts, but you begrudge your only daughter. broke into hysterics, smearing mascara over her face. I have the right. I am the. You are a thief, said, heavy as a verdict. You stole from your parents. You lied to your husband. You humiliated his mother. He turned to Sterling. Pack your bags, son. Are you coming to the hotel with us? We have a lot to discuss. Sterling nodded. He looked broken, but in his eyes appeared something new, some kind of clarity. But wasn't going to give up. She saw she was losing control over everyone, over her parents, over her husband, over the situation. She needed a trump card, the last most powerful trump card that beats any hand. She straightened up, wiped the tears with the back of her hand, and looked at us all with the triumphant smile of a mad woman. You can't kick me out, she said quietly but distinctly. And you, Sterling, aren't going anywhere. And you, Dad, won't leave me. Why is that? Asked Titus, crossing his arms over his chest. He clearly enjoyed this theater. Placed a hand on her flat stomach. Because I'm pregnant, she shouted. You're going to have a grandson, an heir. You won't throw a pregnant woman onto the street. You're going to be a grandmother. You wouldn't dare. Silence hung in the room again. Sterling froze. His mouth opened. Hope flared in his eyes. Hope that everything could still be fixed. That there was something worth enduring for. That this nightmare had a bright side. Pregnant, he whispered. Is it true? Zenobia gasped and pressed her hands to her chest. Froze. His anger stumbled for a moment against the eternal value of continuing the bloodline. I looked at her pose, at her eyes darting across the faces of those present, assessing the effect, and I knew. I just knew. I slowly exhaled, looking straight into his triumphant eyes. She stood in the pose of a martyr, protecting the most holy thing. And this pose was flawless. Too flawless. Pregnant, repeated Sterling, taking an uncertain step toward her. His voice trembled with a mix of hope and fear. Why didn't you say anything? I wanted to make it a surprise, sobbed, instantly switching to fragile mother mode. I was saving this news for a special moment when we were all together as a family. And you. You caused me such stress. It's harmful for the baby. Zenobia had already rushed to her daughter, forgetting the stolen millions. The grandmother instinct proved stronger than logic. Oh, baby, you shouldn't be upset. That say something. We can't do this to her. That stood frowning. His face was still red with anger, but the news clearly confused him. He was a man of tradition. A grandson is sacred. A grandson could redeem the daughter's sins. Titus shifted from foot to foot, looking at his watch. All right, the soap opera continues, he grumbled, but I have a schedule. What are we deciding? Evicting the future mother or what? Everyone looked at me. With defiance, Sterling with pleading, the Vances with expectation. They expected me to surrender, expected the word grandmother to melt my heart, make me forget the humiliation and lies. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at the table. There, among the remains of the luxurious lunch, stood an empty bottle of vintage brut, and a second one started, and next his plate was a glass, at the bottom of which remnants of golden liquid still splashed. I slowly walked to the table, grabbed the bottle by the neck. The glass was warm. Strange, I pronounced, and my voice sounded in the silence like the strike of a gong. Very strain. What strain? She snapped, but panic flashed in her eyes. Strange diet for a pregnant woman. I lifted the bottle higher, demonstrating the label. Brewed Imperial, 12% alcohol content. You drank almost the entire bottle during lunch. I poured for you twice myself, and you demanded more. Palled. That's non-alcoholic, she blurted out. No, darling. I shook my head. This is vintage wine from my cellar. I know every bottle, and you know the taste of alcohol perfectly well. You drank, laughed, and demanded a refill. A pregnant woman who cares about her child wouldn't pour a liter of champagne into herself in this heat. Sterling looked at the bottle in my hand, then at his wife's empty glass, then at her face. "You were drinking," he said hollowly. "I saw it. You drank 3 glasses. You're lying." "I just took a sip," she shouted, retreating. "1 sip for the mood. Doctors allow it. Doctors allow getting drunk until you have red spots on your neck." Asked. He walked up to his daughter, grabbed her chin, and looked into her eyes. "Breathe on me." "Breathe," he barked. Jerked, breaking away, and with that movement gave herself away completely. The smell of alcohol in the hot room was already distinct, but now it became evidence. "You're not pregnant," said with disgust, wiping his hand on his trousers. "You're just a lying wretch willing to speculate, even on an unborn child, to save your own skin." "It was a mistake," sobbed, falling onto the chair. "I thought I was pregnant. I was late. I didn't take a test, but I felt it." "Enough," cut her off. He turned to Sterling. "Son, listen to me carefully. I'm a tough man, but fair. This woman," he pointed at the sobbing daughter, "is sick with greed and lies. She stole from us. She humiliated your mother. She invented a child to manipulate us." He paused, breathing heavily. "If you leave with her now, if you forgive this, you are dead to me. I'm cutting her out of the will. I'm closing all accounts. She won't get a penny from me. And you, if you stay with her, will live on your junior associate's salary and pay her debts." "And I'm sure there are plenty of debts." Sterling stood as if stunned. He looked at his wife, who had turned into a pathetic, hysterical creature smearing snot over her face. He looked at me, calm, straight, standing next to the new owners of the house. He looked at his father-in-law, offering him a choice between honor and the abyss. Sterling wailed, reaching her hands out to him. "Don't listen to them. I love you. We'll manage. They just want to separate us." "Separate?" Zenobia asked quietly. She walked up to her son-in-law and took his hand. Her eyes were full of tears. "Sterling, honey, listen to me. I am a mother, and it hurts me to say this about my own daughter, but she will destroy you. She already started. Run, son. Divorce her. Send her to us. We'll deal with her ourselves. Rehab or a convent. I don't know, but save yourself." Sterling looked at his mother-in-law. In her eyes was such sincere pain and fear for him that his last defense crumbled. He slowly freed his hand from Scrip, who had managed to latch onto his sleeve. "I'm filing for divorce," he said. His voice was quiet but firm for the first time in many years. "What?" Froze. "I'm filing for divorce," he repeated louder. "I don't believe a single word you say anymore. I'm tired of being a fool." He turned to me. "Mom, forgive me." I was blind. I nodded. I wanted to hug him, press him to my chest like in childhood, but now was not the time for sentimentality. The lesson had to be learned to the end. "I forgive you, son, but the house is sold and you have to leave with them." "I understand." He lowered his head. "I'll go to a hotel. I need to think." "Excellent." Titus clapped his hands. "Drama over. Finale clear. And now exit stage left, folks. My crew is idling." Silently took the resisting by the elb. Zenobia picked up her purse. Sterling grabbed his jacket. They shuffled toward the exit. Screamed, cursed us all, threatened lawsuits, but her father dragged her with the of a bulldozer. 5 minutes later, their car, tires screeching, drove out the gates. It became quiet on the terrace. Only me, Titus, and the sound of the sea remained. "Well then, landlady." Titus winked, pulling out a cigar. "Beautifully done. Just like in the movies. Money's in the account, papers signed. When do you hand over the keys?" I walked to the terrace railing. The sun was setting into the sea, painting the water the color of molten gold. This view was worth all the money in the world, and I realized I couldn't give it up. "Not now. Not like this, Mr. Banks." I turned to him. "How about we rewrite the ending? Titus Banks slowly took a drag on his cigar, releasing a thick cloud of smoke that the breeze immediately snatched up. He looked at me with a squint that read, not irritation, but rather the professional interest of an experienced poker player. "Rewrite the ending," he repeated, flicking ash over the railing right onto my favorite rose bushes. On any other day, I would have scolded him, but today it seemed like such a trifle. "You understand we're not in a theater. Signatures are set, money sent. Legally speaking, you are standing on my balcony." My old realtor friend got nervous. He started wiping his foggy glasses with the edge of his jacket, shifting a frightened gaze from me to his massive client. He whispered, "What are you thinking?" "The deal is closed. Recording the deed is just technicalities. My assistant already sent the scans." "You can't just I can." I interrupted him, not taking my eyes off Titus. "The transaction is still pending. We can process a return as an erroneous transfer or cancel the contract by mutual agreement right now." "Why?" Titus leaned his elbows on the railing looming over me like a mountain. "You got a great price. You got rid of the dead weight. Why do you want this house, where every corner now reeks of betrayal? If I were you, I'd take the money and fly to Bali." I looked at the sea. It began to darken, turning from azure to deep ink. "This house doesn't reek of betrayal, Mr. Banks. It smells of my labor, my life. The betrayal was in the people, not the walls. The people are gone. The walls remain, and I don't want to lose them." I turned to him and straightened my back. "I sold the house to burn bridges, so my son and his wife wouldn't have the illusion that they have somewhere to return to, so I myself wouldn't have a path of retreat into the role of the convenient mom. This performance was necessary, but the curtain has fallen." Made a strangled sound like a moan. "But the commission I worked." "Your commission stays with you," I reassured him. "I'll pay you the full percentage. Considerate payment for best supporting actor." Immediately fell silent, his face brightening. Now everything depended only on Titus. He could dig in his heels. He could kick me out the door and would be within his rights. I risked everything, going for the second time that evening. "And what's my interest?" asked Titus, looking me straight in the eye. I wasted time. I drove my car out here. I was already mentally placing tables. "You suggest I just leave?" "I suggest a return of the full amount right now," I said firmly. "Plus 5% on top for the trouble, for your time, and for the pleasure you got kicking out my daughter-in-law." "I saw you enjoyed that." Titus chuckled, the corners of his lips twitched. 5% is generous, but a bit low for a broken dream of a beach house." Everything inside me clenched. If he refused, I would remain a rich but homeless woman. I would lose my anchor. 10, I said. "That's my final offer. That's a huge amount for an hour of your time." Titus laughed loudly, thunderously, so that the seagulls shied away from the roof. He slapped his palm on the railing. "Iron lady, architect, you say. I see you've got a spine." He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out the very contract we signed 20 minutes ago, twirled it in his hands. "You know, miss, I knew right away you weren't selling." "What?" I blinked in surprise. "The eyes." He tapped a finger against his temple. "I've been in business 30 years. I see people who want to get rid of an asset and people who are ready to rip throats out for what's theirs. When you showed me the house, you stroked the walls. You looked at these grapes like they were children. Sellers don't do that." He tore the contract in half. With a sharp rip, the paper turned into 2 useless halves. Then he folded them and tore them again. "I'm not a looter," he said seriously, throwing the scraps into the ashtray. "I saw you were cornered, and I decided to play along. I didn't like your daughter-in-law from the jump. I see through people like that. Empty shell in a pretty wrapper. So consider this my contribution to restoring justice." I stood unable to believe it. The tension that had held me for the last hours began to recede, and my knees treacherously trembled. You refuse the penalty, the 10%. No, of course not. I'm not an idiot, he grinned. You'll transfer the penalty fee. Business is business, but the house is yours. Void the deal. Tell the bank there was a technical error in the routing numbers. Hurriedly nodded, already dialing a number on his phone. Titus extended his hand to me. His palm was huge and warm. Pleasure doing business with a smart woman. And now, if you'll allow me, I'll drink a glass of that very brute your pregnant daughter-in-law didn't finish. To victory, I shook his hand. With pleasure, I replied. I'll open a new bottle. That one's flat. We returned to the living room. The house was mine again. The silence that previously seemed frightening now felt like a blessing. But in this silence, a sharp, persistent sound suddenly rang out. It was my phone left on the table. The screen lit up with the name Sterling. The phone vibrated on the polished surface of the table like a living creature demanding attention. Sterling. The name pulsed on the screen, evoking a complex range of feelings in me. From habitual maternal anxiety to a new cold detachment. Titus, already holding a glass of fresh champagne, nodded at the phone. Going to answer or let him suffer? I picked up the phone but didn't rush to press accept. Let him suffer, I replied, declining the call. Silence is good for him. But the phone rang again and again. The persistence with which he tried to break through suggested that out there beyond my house, the next act of the drama was unfolding. On the fourth time, I finally answered, putting it on speaker. Mom! Sterling's voice was erratic. Background noise of traffic and female screams could be heard. Mom, can you hear me? This is some kind of hell. I hear you, Sterling, I answered calmly, taking a sip of icy brute. What happened? Did you not get checked into the hotel? What hotel? We didn't even make it. He was almost shouting. Dad stopped the car right on the highway. He kicked out. I raised my eyebrows in surprise, meeting Titus's gaze. He chuckled approvingly. Kicked her out, I repeated. Right on the road. Yes. They were fighting the whole way. Was screaming that they had no right, that she would sue them for all the money. She insulted Zenobia, called her an old fool who understands nothing about life. And then just slammed on the brakes. He opened the door, threw her suitcase onto the shoulder and said, Walk. Maybe your brains will fall into place. In the background of the call, Zenobia's voice was heard, trembling and weak. Sterling, son, give me some water. My heart. Mom, continued Sterling. And I heard panic in his voice. We're at a gas station now. My mother-in-law is sick. Is left back there on the highway. She's screaming and throwing rocks at passing cars. I don't know what to do. Should I go back for her or take Zenobia to the hospital? I'm confused. I closed my eyes. My son is 35 years old, and he is still asking Mom how to act in a situation he himself created with his lack of will. Sterling, I said harshly. Listen to me carefully. You call an ambulance for Zenobia right now, if she is truly unwell. You stay with the parents who became victims of your wife. And is a grown woman. She has a phone. She has money for a taxi. The very money she stole from her parents. She'll make it. But she's my wife, he muttered pitifully. She is a criminal, Sterling, I cut him off. And if you go back for her now, you become an accomplice. You make a choice in favor of lies. Is that what you want? A pause hung. I heard his heavy breathing. Heard him fighting the habit of being convenient, being good for everyone. No, he finally exhaled. No, I won't go back. I'm going with the Vances. We're going to the police station. Wants to file a fraud report. Right decision, I said. Hang in there, son. It's going to be a long night. Mom, what about you? His voice trembled. Can I come to you later, when it's all over? I have nowhere to go. The apartment in the city. Turns out it's a rental, too. Lied that it was her property from before marriage. I looked at my living room, at the empty chairs, where people who considered me a nobody sat an hour ago, at Titus, who was examining a painting on the wall with interest, at who was finishing his coffee. My house had just returned to me. It was clean. It was my sanctuary, and I wasn't ready to let in the chaos that still hung on my son's shoulders. "No, Sterling," I said gently, but firmly, "you can't come to me." "Why?" He was taken aback. "But you didn't sell the house." "You're there. I am here. But my house is currently under quarantine from stupidity, from weakness, from other people's problems. You are 35. Get a room at a hotel. Figure out your life yourself. Without mom's advice, without mom's soup, and without mom's roof over your head. Only then will you become a man." "Mom, you're abandoning me." "I'm letting you go," I corrected. "Those are different things. Call me in a month when you have a divorce decree in hand and a plan for how to live on. Goodbye for now." I pressed end call before he could reply. My hand with the phone dropped. Inside was empty, but it was a clean, ringing emptiness, like in a freshly cleaned room. Titus slowly clapped his hands. "Bravo," he said without a shadow of irony. "That was stronger than selling the house, refusing your own son when he's on his knees. That takes nerves of steel." "That takes love," I objected, looking at the dark phone screen. "Sometimes love isn't letting them lean on you, but letting them stand up themselves. If I hand him a crutch now, he'll stay lame for life." "Wise," he nodded. "Well then, the show is over. Villains punished. Heroes sent into exile for spiritual growth. And us and us." I smiled sincerely and lightly for the first time that day. "We will celebrate. Get the cognac. The one you brought me as a gift 5 years ago and we never got around to opening." Beamed. "The 20-year-old Armenian brandy." "It's in the car." "Be right back." Well, ran to the car, I walked out onto the terrace. Night had fully claimed its rights. The stars over the ocean were bright, sharp. Below in the darkness, the surf roared. Somewhere out there on the highway, my soon-to-be ex-daughter-in-law was possibly hitchhiking, cursing the day she decided I was a weak old woman. Somewhere out there, my son was making adult decisions for the first time in his life. And I stood on my land. I felt the warmth of the stone through my soles. I inhaled the scent of night flowers. I was alone and I was free. But the story wasn't quite over. There was one nuance, a small detail I hadn't told even Titus. When I sent that file to the Vances, the scan of the deed, I attached another document to it. Bank statement, the very one I managed to get through old connections in the banking sector a week ago, when I first started suspecting something was wrong. I knew about the money for a long time. I was just waiting. I was giving them a chance. And now when Vance sitting in the police station finally opens that file, entering the password I'm about to send him, he will see not just sums. He will see the recipients of transfers. And one name there will surprise him. A lover. No, of course not. The word lover wasn't in the statement. There was the name of a fitness trainer to whom transferred $2,000 weekly with the note supplements. But the name wasn't random. I took out my phone and typed a message too. Password for archive 1988. Your daughter's birth year. Look at the last pages. There are transfers to a certain Washington. I think you'll be interested to know who that is. Send. Now the finale was truly irreversible. I returned to the living room, where was already pouring the amber liquid into snifters. To a new life, proclaimed Titus. To freedom, I answered, clinking glasses. And then my phone pinged again. But it wasn't Sterling, and it wasn't. It was a notification from a travel app. Price for tickets to Rome dropped. Are you still interested? I looked at the screen. Rome, my dream. The city I studied in architecture textbooks, but never saw in person because I always had to help someone, save someone, build something. I raised my eyes to my guests. I said, "Do you know it's artichoke season right now?" Titus laughed. "You never cease to surprise." "You going?" "I'm going," I said decisively. "Tomorrow." But I didn't know that tomorrow morning would bring me one more surprise. A surprise that would make me delay for another couple of hours, because someone I didn't expect to see at all would appear at the gates of my house. Morning met me not with bird song, but with insistent knocking at the gate. I set aside the cup of coffee I was drinking on the terrace, already packed with a small suitcase at my feet. The ticket to Rome was bought for the evening flight. Taxi ordered for noon. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the gate, adjusting my sunglasses. Behind the wrought iron stood not Sterling, and not even the police. There stood a courier with a huge basket of white roses, and behind him, leaning against the hood of his SUV, stood Titus. I opened the gate. "Mr. Banks," I was surprised. "Did you forget your jacket yesterday?" "No." He smiled, taking off his dark glasses. "I didn't come for things. I came with a proposal." He nodded to the courier. The man carried the basket into the yard and placed it at my feet. A white envelope lay among the flowers. "This is for you," said Titus. "Last night it got to me. You rarely meet a woman with such character and such a taste for life." I raised a brow questioningly. "And what is in the envelope?" "Another sales contract." "No, it's a management contract." He stepped closer. "I thought you're leaving for Italy. The house will be empty. And I fell in love with this place and your garden. I propose a deal. I rent Indigo Point from you for the whole summer for very good money, but with one condition, which is you allow me to sometimes send you photos of the roses so you can consult me on how not to kill them. I'm a total zero in gardening, and it's a pity to ruin such beauty." I laughed. There was so much lightness in that laugh, as much as I hadn't felt in years. "Do you know how to make offers that are hard to refuse, Mr. Banks? And also," he lowered his voice, "I can keep an eye on the house so that no relatives think of coming back. My security is very persuasive." It was the perfect option. The house would be looked after, flowers watered, and I would get extra funds for travel and a guarantee of security. "I agree." I extended my hand to him. An hour later, I was already sitting in a taxi. Titus remained at the villa, the new temporary master who would water my roses and scare away the ghosts of the past. I looked at the receding house at the sparkling sea. The phone in my bag pinged. I took it out. A message from Sterling. "Mom," I filed the report. "Was detained for disorderly conduct on the highway, and then the stuff about the loans came out. It's bad. Dad is furious. I rented a room looking for a job. Forgive me. I'll handle it." I smiled and typed a reply. "I believe in you. You'll handle it. See you in a month. I'll bring you an Italian tie. Love you." Then I opened settings and pressed block on's number. Forever. I leaned back in the seat, inhaled the smell of the leather interior, and looked at the road running into the distance. Ahead was the airport. Ahead was Rome. Ahead was a life that belonged only to me. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in many years heard not the noise of others' demands, but the music of my own soul. The silence was magnificent. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.